What happens when the glittering world of social media collides with the darkest corners of human desperation? Today, we're diving into the tragic story of Yoon Ji-ah, a 24-year-old Korean TikTok influencer with over 300,000 followers, whose dreams of stardom ended in a mysterious death that shocked the nation. This isn't just another true crime story. This is about a young woman who trusted the wrong person, a man living a double life built on lies and debt, and a final live stream that would become her last goodbye to the world. What police discovered would reveal a shocking truth about the dangerous intersection of social media fame, exploitation, and the lengths some people will go to maintain an illusion of success. Stay with me, because this story gets darker than you can imagine. Yoon Ji-ah was living the dream that millions of young people chase every single day. At just 24 years old, she had built a following of over 300,000 people on TikTok, creating content that resonated with viewers across South Korea and beyond. But for Yoon, social media wasn't just about likes and comments. It was a stepping stone. She had bigger aspirations. She wanted to be an actress, to see her face on screens across the country, to transform her online popularity into something more substantial and lasting. Her content was bright, engaging, full of the kind of energy that makes people hit the follow button. She was young, talented, and on the rise. Everything seemed to be going her way. But behind the carefully curated posts and cheerful videos, Yoon's life was becoming increasingly complicated. She had entered into a business partnership with a man who called himself Black Cat online. His real name was Choi, and he was in his 50s, decades older than Yoon. To the outside world, and especially to Yoon when they first met, Choi presented himself as a successful businessman, the CEO of an IT company, a big-spending VIP who knew how to navigate the world of digital content and online fame. He seemed like exactly the kind of mentor and business partner a young influencer would want. Someone with resources, connections, and experience. Someone who could help take her career to the next level. Choi didn't just talk about being wealthy and successful. He backed it up with actions that seemed to prove his status. He spent extravagantly on video platforms, pouring money into building his reputation as a high roller, a serious player in the digital content world. The numbers were staggering. Investigators would later discover that Choi had spent at least 100 million won, which translates to roughly $70,000, on various video platforms. This wasn't pocket change. This was the kind of spending that made people take notice, that built credibility, that made a young influencer like Yoon believe she was partnering with someone who had the means to help her achieve her dreams. But it was all a lie, a carefully constructed facade that was crumbling behind the scenes. The truth about Choi was the polar opposite of the image he projected. He wasn't a successful CEO. He wasn't a wealthy businessman with unlimited resources. He was drowning in debt. His financial situation was so dire that his house had been seized through forced auction. Everything he owned was slipping through his fingers. The money he was spending to maintain his image as Black Cat, the big spending VIP, wasn't coming from legitimate business success. It was borrowed, stolen from his future, a desperate attempt to keep up appearances, even as his entire life collapsed around him. And somehow he had convinced Yoon Ji-ah to tie her rising career to his sinking ship. The partnership between Yoon and Choi started to deteriorate rapidly. What might have begun as a mutually beneficial business arrangement transformed into something much darker. Choi became increasingly controlling. He gave Yoon coercive instructions, dictating not just her content, but her entire schedule. The demands became unreasonable, the pressure relentless. For Yoon, the dream partnership had become a nightmare. She was no longer building her career. She was trapped in a situation that was consuming her life, her time, her autonomy. The man who had promised to help her achieve her dreams was instead becoming an obstacle, a source of stress and control that she desperately needed to escape. Yoon made the decision that any reasonable person would make. She wanted out. She wanted to end the partnership with Choi and move forward with her life and career on her own terms. But Choi wasn't ready to let her go. He couldn't afford to let her go, in more ways than one. His entire carefully constructed identity was built on the illusion of success, and losing his partnership with a rising influencer would be another crack in the facade. Security camera footage from this period would later reveal just how desperate Choi had become. The cameras captured him on his knees, literally begging Yoon not to leave. It was a pathetic display from a man who had presented himself as powerful and successful, now reduced to pleading with a woman half his age to continue a partnership she no longer wanted. September 11th started like many other days for Yoon's followers. She went live on TikTok, streaming from Yeongjong Island in Incheon. Her followers tuned in, watching her, commenting, engaging with her content the way they always did. There was no indication that anything was wrong, no hint that this would be the last time they would see her alive. The live stream seemed normal, just another day in the life of an influencer sharing moments with her audience. But what her followers couldn't see was what was happening off camera, the tension that was building, the danger that was closing in around her. At 3:27 in the afternoon, security cameras captured something disturbing. The footage showed Yoon trying to leave a vehicle, but she was forcibly prevented from doing so. Someone slammed the door shut, trapping her inside. This happened approximately 30 minutes after her final live stream ended. In the span of half an hour, Yoon had gone from broadcasting to her hundreds of thousands of followers to being physically prevented from leaving a vehicle. The attack happened shortly after. The details are horrific, the kind that make you realize how quickly a situation can turn from uncomfortable to deadly. What happened next is a journey that speaks to premeditation and desperation in equal measure. Yoon's body was found on a mountainside in Muju County, located in North Jeolla Province. For those unfamiliar with Korean geography, this is significant. Muju County is over 3 hours away from Yeongjong Island, where Yoon had been streaming and where she was last seen alive. Someone had transported her body across a significant distance, deep into mountainous terrain, far from where anyone would think to look for her. The condition of her body told a brutal story. She had bruises covering her skin. There were strangulation marks around her neck, the kind of injuries that speak to a violent personal attack. The autopsy confirmed what the visible injuries suggested. Yoon Ji-ah had died from asphyxiation caused by neck compression. Someone had strangled her, cutting off her air supply until her life slipped away. She was 24 years old. She had 300,000 people following her online journey. She had dreams of becoming an actress. And she died alone, attacked by someone she had trusted enough to enter into a business partnership with. Investigators began piecing together what had happened, and the evidence pointed directly at Choi. Security footage showed him with a suitcase heading toward the mountain where Yoon's body would eventually be discovered. But Choi wasn't taking a direct route. He stopped 8 times along the way, deliberately trying to confuse any potential police investigation. He was creating a trail that would be difficult to follow, buying himself time, perhaps hoping that by the time anyone realized Yoon was missing, the evidence would be too scattered to piece together. On September 13th, just 2 days after Yoon's final live stream, police arrested Choi. Initially, he denied everything. He claimed he had nothing to do with Yoon's disappearance. He maintained his innocence, perhaps hoping that without a body, without concrete evidence, he could talk his way out of the situation. But when police found Yoon's body on the mountainside, when the physical evidence became undeniable, Choi's story changed. He confessed. The man who had spent 100 million won to maintain an image of success, who had presented himself as a CEO and a VIP, who had begged on his knees for Yoon to stay in their partnership, admitted to killing her. The news of Yoon's death sent shockwaves through the Korean social media community and beyond. Her followers, the 300,000 people who had watched her videos and engaged with her content, were devastated. They had seen her just days before, alive and seemingly well on their screens. Now, she was gone, murdered by someone who was supposed to be her business partner. The tragedy felt personal to many of them. a reminder that the people they follow online, the influencers whose lives seem so public and accessible, are still vulnerable to the same dangers that exist in the offline world. Yoon's family, grappling with unimaginable grief, made the decision to post a tribute on her TikTok account. It's a heartbreaking message that reveals the person behind the influencer persona, the daughter and family member who was loved deeply by those who knew her best. They wrote about how Yoon was like a gentle sunrise, bringing warmth and light to their lives. They shared small, intimate details that her followers might never have known. She loved bread, a simple pleasure that made her happy. These weren't the carefully curated facts of an influencer's public image. These were the real memories of a real person, someone who existed beyond the screen, beyond the follower count, beyond the dreams of fame. The family's statement continued, painting a picture of a young woman who was kind, who had dreams, who brought joy to the people around her. They talked about how she would never get to achieve the goals she had set for herself, how her potential would remain forever unfulfilled. The tribute was a reminder that behind every social media account, behind every influencer, behind every person building a following online, there is a human being with family who loves them, with dreams that matter, with a life that has value far beyond likes and views and follower counts. This tragedy raises uncomfortable questions about the world of social media influence and the culture that surrounds it. Yoon Ji-ah was chasing a dream that millions of young people pursue. She wanted to be famous, to be successful, to turn her online presence into a real career. There's nothing wrong with that ambition, but in pursuit of that dream, she entered into a partnership with someone who presented himself as something he wasn't. Choi built an elaborate lie, spending money he didn't have to create an image of success that would attract people like Yoon, people who were looking for mentorship, for business opportunities, for someone who could help them navigate the complicated world of digital content creation. The social media economy creates these situations. It creates a world where appearances matter more than reality, where the image of success can be more valuable than actual success, where spending $70,000 to look like a VIP makes sense if it helps you attract the right partnerships. And it creates vulnerability. Young influencers, especially those just starting to build their careers, are often looking for guidance, for business partners, for people who seem to know more than they do. They're vulnerable to exploitation by people who see their ambition and their naivety as opportunities. But this story is also about something more fundamental than social media culture. It's about desperation. Choi was a man whose life was falling apart. His debts were crushing him. His house was being taken away. Everything he had built was crumbling. And instead of facing that reality, instead of dealing with his problems honestly, he constructed an elaborate lie. He spent money he didn't have to pretend to be someone he wasn't. And when that lie was threatened, when Yoon wanted to end their partnership and walk away, he couldn't let her go. His desperation turned violent. His need to maintain control, to keep his facade intact, led him to make a choice that destroyed two lives, Yoon's and his own. There's also the question of how these partnerships form in the first place. The influencer economy operates largely without regulation, without the kind of protections that exist in traditional business relationships. Young content creators often enter into agreements with managers, partners, and sponsors without legal representation, without contracts that protect their interests, without any real understanding of what they're getting into. They're navigating a new kind of economy, one that didn't exist a generation ago, one that doesn't have established rules and protections. And predators know this. They know that young, ambitious influencers are often willing to take risks, to trust people who present themselves as successful, to enter into partnerships that might not be in their best interest. Yoon's story is a tragedy, but it's also a warning. It's a reminder that the people we meet online, no matter how successful they seem, no matter how much money they appear to have, no matter how convincing their image is, might not be who they claim to be. It's a reminder that business partnerships, especially in the unregulated world of social media, need to be approached with caution, with legal protection, with the kind of skepticism that might feel cynical but can be life-saving. It's a reminder that when a partnership becomes controlling, when someone starts making unreasonable demands, when you want to leave but someone won't let you go, those are red flags that should never be ignored. For Yoon's followers, the 300,000 people who watched her content, this tragedy is also a reminder of the parasocial nature of online relationships. They felt like they knew her, they watched her regularly, engaged with her content, felt connected to her life. But they didn't know about the partnership that was controlling her. They didn't know about the man who was making unreasonable demands. They didn't see the warning signs because those things happened off camera, in the parts of her life that weren't shared online. The curated nature of social media means that we only see what influencers choose to show us, and sometimes the most important, most dangerous parts of their lives remain hidden until it's too late. The Korean public's reaction to Yoon's death has been one of outrage and grief. There have been calls for better protections for content creators, for regulations that would prevent the kind of exploitative partnerships that Yoon found herself trapped in. There have been discussions about the dark side of influencer culture, about the pressure young people face to achieve fame and success, about the predators who exploit that ambition. Yoon's death has become more than just a personal tragedy. It has become a catalyst for conversations about how to make the digital content creation world safer, how to protect young people who are pursuing careers that didn't exist a generation ago. For Choi, the consequences of his actions are just beginning. He faces murder charges, and the evidence against him is overwhelming. The security footage, the confession, the body found on the mountainside, all of it points to his guilt. He will likely spend the rest of his life in prison, his fake identity as a successful CEO replaced by the reality of being a convicted murderer. The $100 million he spent to build his image, the elaborate lie he constructed, all of it was for nothing. He destroyed a young woman's life and his own, all to maintain a facade that was always destined to collapse. But no punishment for Choi can bring Yoon back. No justice can undo what happened on September 11th. Her family will never see her achieve her dream of becoming an actress. Her followers will never see new content from her. The gentle sunrise her family described is gone forever, extinguished by a man who couldn't face his own failures, who chose violence over honesty, who saw a young woman's life as less important than his desperate need to maintain control. Yoon Ji-ah's story is a tragedy that resonates far beyond South Korea, far beyond the world of TikTok and social media influence. It's a story about trust and betrayal, about ambition and exploitation, about the dangers that lurk behind carefully constructed images. It's a reminder that the digital world, for all its opportunities and connections, can also be a place of profound danger. And it's a call to action for everyone involved in the social media economy, from platforms to content creators to followers, to think more carefully about safety, about protection, about the real human lives behind the screens we stare at every day. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and be kind to each other.